All right, and welcome everybody to Maine's Native Turtles. We're going to get started now. Jade is down at Maine Wildlife Park, and she's going to be speaking to us about Maine's native turtles. So let me go ahead and give it down to Jade at Maine Wildlife Park.
Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Jade, and I'm an educator for the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife here in Maine. And I'm at the Wildlife Park in Gray today, which is part of the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Department. Here at the park, we have a lot of different types of Maine native animals. We have moose, black bear, bobcats, lynx, different raptors and reptiles, and a lot of small mammals too. And of course, we have turtles, and that's what we'll be talking about today. All the animals that are here today are here for either they were orphaned, injured, or sometimes they were illegal pets that have become human dependent, so they can't live in the wild anymore. All the animals here are non-releasable. And if you want to learn more about the wildlife park, you can go to mainewildlifepark.com to learn more. So let's talk about turtles. Turtles have been on this planet for millions of years, and ancient turtles were larger than the size of big pickup trucks, and today's turtles are a lot smaller. There are some sea turtles that can be as large as cars. However, Maine's native turtles are much smaller than cars. So some different characteristics that make a turtle, they are reptiles. This means that they are cold-blooded, and another word for this is they are ectothermic, meaning they heat from the outside, sorry. And a cold-blooded animal can only control their internal temperature a little bit, and they rely on their external environment to help them regulate their body temperature. So if they're too cold, they bask in the sun, and when they're too hot, they might go for a swim or find some shade. They rely on their environment to regulate their temperature. Another thing that makes a turtle a reptile is their scales. So if we look at this turtle shell here, this is from a painted turtle. The shell is covered in scales called scutes. So all these shapes on here are those shells. Those are the scutes. And then their bodies too are covered in scales. And they shed and replace those scales. So this turtle shell, you can see that some of the some of the scales are starting to dry and flake off. And those fall off and grow with the turtle as they grow throughout their life. Another thing that turtles are vertebrates. This means that they have bones. So their skeleton is like other animals, but turtles have a special design for extra protection. So they also have this bony shell, and their backbones and their ribs are actually fused with their shell. So here inside this snapping turtle shell, we can see how their bones are fused inside, and we can see this extra protection on this bony shell that of course is going to help protect them. And their ribs are fused to the top shell. This top part of the shell is called the carapace. And then their sternum and the part of the rib cage that's fused underneath them is to the plastron. And so this is the carapace on the top, and the plastron is the part of the shell on the bottom. And I'll keep talking about those as we talk about turtles today too, so we'll keep using those words. And again, that shell is bone that grows with the turtles as they grow. So turtles don't have teeth, but they do have these beaks and a very sharp, strong jaw, and that's covered in keratin. So that beak is covered in keratin to protect their jaw and keep it sharp. Here I have a small turtle skull. Get it nice and close so we can see the back part here, this bone colored part, that's the skeleton, that's part of their jaw. And then the colored part in the front and on top of their head, that's the keratin. So that is the beak that protects like their scales. So that keratin will grow and replace like their scales do. Another thing that turtles do is they lay eggs. They lay their eggs on land, usually in sandy soil, so they can get sunshine. It can be in grass fields or in lawns. So we definitely want to watch out and stay alert for these turtle nests so we don't interfere with them. And here you can see this female turtle. She digs the nest with her back feet in the sand and dirt. And then the hatchlings come out and their mom has left. So they have to find their way on their own. And you may see turtles around this time of year crossing the road. And it's usually around different wetlands. And those are usually the females coming and going from the pond where they've laid their eggs. And turtles, they are going to the good spot that they know of. So we definitely want to watch out for them in the roads. And those eggs are soft. They're not hard like a bird egg. They have this rubbery leather exterior. It's kind of like the soft leather on your shoes. So it's still a solid protection on the outside, but it's a little bit softer than a bird egg is. Here in Maine, we have 7 different species of turtles. This doesn't include sea turtles that sometimes will visit us on the coast. But 7 different species of turtles here in Maine. We have the Blandings turtle, the wood turtle, box turtle, spotted, musk, snapping, and painted. So those are some examples of all the different species that you can find here in Maine. In the pond that's behind me, this is where the painted turtles live. There are other places at the park that you can see the rest of our turtle species that are here at the park. That's in our visitor center. But here in the pond behind me is just home to the painted turtles. And hopefully later we can go, I'll move the camera so we can get closer and see some of them out sunning themselves. All of the turtles here at the park are non-releasable. And that can be from injuries, usually from a vehicle collision or another way that they got injuries. They've been surrendered by their owners. So many turtles live up to 25 or 30 years, which is longer than a lot of people are prepared to care for that pet. So do not ever release pet turtles into the wild. And it is illegal to take turtles from the wild. If you have any questions about that, you can always contact the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Next, we'll talk about aquatic turtles compared to terrestrial turtles. So here we have some examples of both an aquatic and then a terrestrial turtle. So when you look at their shells, they're very different. The dome-shaped shell on the terrestrial turtle, and then there's that flatter, more streamlined shell for the aquatic turtle. And those are different because the streamlined shells help them swim. And then their colors are going to be different too. They use their shells and colors for camouflage. So they need different camouflage in the water than they do when they're on land. They also have different feet. So you see those aquatic turtles have more of a webbed foot for helping them swim. And then the terrestrial turtles won't have webbed feet or webbed toes because they're not swimming as much. They might just soak or sit in water, but they're not going to be swimming. But both aquatic turtles and terrestrial turtles lay their eggs on land. So that's something that all turtles have in common, is needing to lay their eggs in a dry place. The first turtle that we're going to talk about is the Blandings turtle. And I have a Blanding turtle friend here. This is our female Blandings turtle here at the wildlife park. And some of their distinguishing characteristics are that yellow throat and chin that she's very proudly displaying for us here. And they're a medium-sized turtle, so she's going to be 7 to 10 inches long. She's on the bigger side, so her shell is closer to 10, maybe even 12 inches long. And they have this helmet-shaped shell. So the carapace on top is shaped like a helmet. And if I get her close, you can see she's covered in these speckled tan spots. So she has these tan speckles all over her shell. And they have a partially hinged plastron. So the bottom of her shell has a partial hinge on it, so she can close up a little bit tighter inside of her shell. She's going to eat different things like tadpoles, aquatic insects, and even amphibian eggs. And it's important that we also mention that the Blandings turtle is an endangered species in Maine. So they're endangered due to different development and habitat loss, vehicle collisions. So if you see a Blandings turtle, you definitely want to report that to Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Don't touch them or move them or take them out of their habitat, but take a picture and report that for the department. And they live in mostly aquatic different areas. So they're going to live in marshes, vernal pools, swamps, ponds, and slow moving rivers and streams. And here you can see a blanding sitting on a log. And again, you can see that really bright yellow colored chin and throat and those aquatic swimming feet. So she has some webbing on her toes to help her swim too. The next one we'll talk about are the turtles that live here in the pond behind me, the painted turtles. So they have yellow or red stripes that run down their carapace all the way from their head to their tail. So they got their name because people thought that this looked like they had been painted. They're also known as sun turtles because they're often seen sunbathing. And they have some different adaptations. You can look on some of these pictures and see those webbed feet. So their back feet are webbed for swimming, and their front feet are less webbed. They don't use their front feet as much for swimming. And the males especially have these long claws on their front toes for tickling the cheeks of the girls to see if the girls like them and want to mate with them and then lay their eggs. So they use those claws to tickle the girl turtle's cheeks. And they're going to eat some aquatic plants, but they mostly eat invertebrates, tadpoles, and fish that they'll find in the water. And they live in a variety of wetland habitats. They live in ponds, bogs, marshes, and slow-moving streams. And another thing about painted turtles is that they look very similar to red-eared sliders. And red-eared sliders are a non-native species. They are invasive, and people often release them as pets. So we don't want to put these invasive species into the wild. So never release your pet red-eared slider. And there's a picture to show how they do look very similar. So the painted turtle is the first picture, and then the red-eared slider is the one with that red spot on the side of its head. The next turtle we'll talk about are snapping turtles. They are Maine's largest turtle. They'll weigh up to 15 or 20 pounds on average, but they can also weigh more than that. They have very long necks and tails and thick bodies and long claws. They live in different marshes, streams, lakes, and they'll sometimes live in brackish water, which is water that's partially fresh and partially salt water. And they have some different cool adaptations. So they have these tongues that is like a lure. So they use that to lure in prey and catch their prey. They also have a camouflaged body and shell that helps them blend into the bottom of their habitat. So they're going to hide on the bottom and sit very still and then strike at their prey using their long neck and that lure that they use to get their prey to come close to them. And the musk turtle uses some similar hunting methods. We'll talk about the musk turtle next. But snapping turtles will eat different frogs, fish, sometimes even small mammals like mice, and they'll occasionally even eat birds. So this is the musk turtle. We're going from Maine's largest species of turtle to Maine's smallest species of turtle. The musk turtle is usually less than 5 inches long, and they have 2 yellow stripes that run along the full side of their face. Their carapace is usually an olive brownish black, sometimes even a green hue to it. And they're very difficult to find, not only because they're small, but because they live like the snapping turtle does. They're spending a lot of time on the bottom of the water. And they'll be found in ponds, shallow lakes, and slow-moving shallow streams. They are very feisty little turtles. Adults are known for being aggressive and will bite when they feel threatened. And their name comes from an adaptation that they emit a musky, stinky odor. Another name that they're sometimes referred to as is the stink pot turtles, due to that musky, stinky odor. And they eat carrion, which is deceased animals. They'll also eat small fish, insects, snails, and even freshwater clams. The next turtle we'll talk about is a wood turtle. So we sometimes call them old red legs, and that's because they have this scarlet, orangish red colored legs and around their bodies, and they're about medium sized. I have here a wood turtle shell. This is a large wood turtle shell. They'll be about anywhere between 6 and 12 inches long, and this one's closer to 12 inches long. And they get that wood turtle name from this brown carapace that's deeply sculpted, and it has these chiseled peaks and divots in it, and these concentric rings around the tops of their carapace here. So it looks like they're carved out of wood. And they live in different slow-moving rivers and streams. They like to live closer to the land, close to those rivers and streams. And they eat different mushrooms, berries, sometimes slugs and worms. They are very intelligent species of turtle. Unfortunately, this made them a very popular pet, which has hurt their population here in the Northeast. They are a species of special concern. They are often taken from the wild for the pet trade. They also face the same things as a lot of the other turtles here in Maine of the loss of habitat and vehicle collisions. So if you see a wood turtle, they're another one to report that sighting to the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife so we can track those populations. The next turtle that I actually have here is a box turtle. And this is a mailbox turtle. And the males have those very red eyes. His eyes are that bright color. And they are a little bit smaller. They'll be 4 to 8 inches long. This is a larger box turtle. He's closer to 8 inches long. And they have these yellow or orange patterns on their carapace. His is yellow. And that very dome-shaped carapace. And they have a special adaptation. I'm gonna set him down for a minute and pick up this turtle shell. I don't wanna turn him up on his back. So we'll use the empty shell to show this special hinge adaptation. And this makes it so they can completely close inside of their shell. They burrow under loose leaves and small mammal burrows sometimes to hibernate. And their diet's different plants, berries, worms, and insects. The first picture is the box turtle here at the park that I was holding. And the second picture is showing that hinged hiding adaptation. And the box turtles in Maine are also an endangered species. They're also facing the same issues of being taken for the pet trade, habitat loss, and vehicle collisions. Somewhere between 40 and 50% of their population has declined here in Maine. So if you see one of these box turtles, definitely report that also, but don't take them from their habitat. Put that guy back down. And box turtles are a more terrestrial species. You could tell from that dome shaped, and their feet are not webbed. So you'll find them in woodlands and fields. They can't swim, so they just soak and will sit in shallow streams or puddles. The last turtle we'll talk about is the spotted turtle. So they get their name from these yellow spots that cover their shells. They're also a little bit smaller. They're only 4 or 6 inches long. And their carapace is very dark. And then those bright yellow spots that don't just cover their shells, they also have spots on their head and neck. And in captivity, or if we're studying these animals, we can use those spotted patterns sometimes to tell different spotted turtles apart from each other. Spotted turtles can live for over 50 years, but they usually in the wild live about 25 years. They have less webbing because they live in shallow wetlands, so they're not swimming in deep water as often, but they can. And they eat different insects, tadpoles, and aquatic plants. Maine is the most northern limit for their species, so they'll only be found in southern or sometimes central Maine in different slow-moving streams, ponds, vernal pools, and forested wetlands. So those are all the different species of turtles that we have here in Maine. Now we're going to talk about some of the different species in Maine, the different threats that they face. So we started talking about a lot of these. One is habitat fragmentation. So the different development, human development has reduced available habitat and often splits up habitats that those animals need to move around in different areas for their survival. And it also decreases their total habitat, leading to habitat loss. We also talked about vehicle collisions, so they're often trying to cross roads due to this different habitat fragmentation. And we also talked about how people are taking them as pets. So they're illegally taking them from the wild to have as pets, and wildlife are not pets, so we don't want to do that. The Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife staff are working to protect and study wild turtles and protect these habitats. And there are different ways that you can help too. So I mentioned some of these, but I'll go through each one in a little bit more detail. So how you can help is don't release pet turtles into the wild. So these pet turtles, they don't know how to survive. And then the ones that do survive might even grow bigger and outcompete with native turtles. They can also introduce types of bacteria or viruses that harm or kill the native turtles in that population. Another way is to be very cautious of turtles crossing the road. If you see a turtle in the road, you need to be very safe. Do not take it home. They are probably a female that was laying her eggs or heading home after laying her eggs. So you need to be very cautious. Let her go in the direction that she is going. They know where they are heading. So don't try and turn them around or put them on the other side of the road. And if you see them, make sure, especially if you're a child, have an adult with you. You don't want to interfere with these turtles. Just be as safe as you can. These vehicle collisions can end up damaging their shells and bones. So we want to be really careful. And you can report turtles into the Wildlife Road Watch, especially if you think it's a rare turtle. You can take a picture and report it. And that's at wildlifecrossing.net/Maine. You can go to that website to learn more about the Wildlife Road Watch. And then the last thing that you can do to help that we've mentioned a couple times too is being on the lookout for Maine's different rare species of turtles. So we have the 2 endangered species, the Blandings and the box turtle. The spotted is threatened, and then the wood turtle, that's the species of special concern. So if you see any of these out, you do not want to take them from their habitat. Just take a photo and report where you saw them to the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. So I'd love to answer any questions that anyone has about Maine's native turtles now.
We do have one question here. There's a question. So do most turtles in Maine live near water and sand?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So most turtles do need to live near water. Even the terrestrial turtles are still a cold-blooded species. So especially in the summer when they get really hot, they want to be close to even a shallow body of water where they can soak, and it helps take care of their scales and shells and everything too. So they need a mixture of land and water to stay happy and healthy, to regulate their body temperatures too.
We have another question. Can a turtle ever come out of its shell?
That's a really good question. So we'll see in cartoons and animations sometimes the turtle will just hop out of its shell and run away, and that's very far from true. So I'll hold up this snapping turtle shell again. So their bodies, these bones, are fused. So they're actually attached and grow into their shells. So as long as the turtle's alive, they cannot come out of their shell. It is attached with them, it grows with them, it is their forever protection. So they cannot jump and run out of their shells. They have to keep those shells on them. They're attached with their bones to their bodies.
And somebody else would like to know, how do the painted turtles get painted?
It's a great question. So we actually have had some turtles here at the park where when they come, they are lacking some of their color. So they get that color from being healthy and having a good diet and getting the right amount of sunlight and time in the water. So if a turtle is not getting the proper diet and nutrition, and they're not getting that appropriate sunlight and time outdoors, so if they're being kept as a pet inside and they never get the proper lighting or the proper diet, they won't have those colors. So all their coloration comes from their diet and their environment helping them.
We had a couple of questions about turtles and their young. One is, if you see a mom turtle laying her eggs in a dangerous area, can you move her if she's laying her eggs?
So we don't recommend ever interfering with a female laying her eggs. They will sometimes lay those eggs in very unfortunate places. So sometimes the roadside is sandy, and that seems like a good place for that female to lay her eggs and leave her nest there. And we always say, if you care, to just leave them there. So the best thing to do is to just leave that nest where it is, and we can hope for the best. I know some people on their properties will, at a distance, maybe put up a sign that says that there's a turtle nest there so that other people know to be extra cautious in that area, especially if it's a less ideal place for that female to have left her nest.
And another question is, where do wood turtles and all other turtles go in the wintertime?
So it's different for each species. Some aquatic turtles will hibernate in the water. So the painted turtle, they will burrow into the bottom of the pond and into the muck during the really cold winter days. And on the warmer days, they'll actually slowly move around and swim under the ice in those bodies of water. And an interesting thing about painted turtles is when they're burrowed into the muck, they actually breathe through their butts. So I think it's kind of funny, but it's an adaptation that they have so that when they're buried in the muck, they can breathe through their butts. And the more terrestrial turtles might burrow into different dead leaves or loose ground that they find in the wetland forested areas. Sometimes they'll even hibernate in small animal holes.
And another question is about the nesting of turtles. Do the turtles ever sit on their nest of eggs?
No, so the turtles do leave those nests. They nest away from the water, so the eggs stay dry. If the eggs get wet, the babies inside would actually drown. So the females have to then return back to the water to find their food and again to regulate their body temperatures. So the females don't sit on the nest. They dig their nest, lay the eggs, cover it up, and then leave.
And then another question is, do turtles ever get along if they are different kinds of turtles?
So turtles are usually pretty solitary animals. They like you'll see groups of painted turtles living together, and you might see a couple of wood turtles, and they will share a habitat, but they don't really socialize with each other or interact with each other. So different turtles of different species can live in and share the same lakes and ponds and streams and habitats, but they don't interact with each other.
All right, and we just have one more question here, and then we're gonna get going. But the question is, how much force does the snapping turtle have in its jaws?
Yeah, I don't know the exact like amount of pressure that a snapping turtle can bite down with. They do have very, very powerful jaws. We know that it is a lot of force. We could probably look up and find the actual number, but it's a lot of force. They have a very strong jaw and strong bite. So you definitely don't want to go putting your fingers anywhere near a snapping turtle's mouth.
All right, so that is all of our questions. So back to you, Jade.
Perfect. Those are some really good questions. I would like to, if everyone can just kind of hold on to their seats for a minute, we're going to move to the end of the turtle pond and see some of our turtles basking in the sun here. So if we look on the end of this log, there's a large painted turtle sitting there on the log. And they are moving very slowly right now. They are just starting to come out of hibernation, and these sunny days are perfect for soaking up the sun and starting to get their bodies moving a little bit. And soon they'll be swimming around this pond like crazy. We can go back over here too. This is a little behind the scenes footage. And we'll say hi and bye to the box turtle. This is our mailbox turtle. Thank you for being such a great participant. And our Blandings turtle. And again, both of the Blandings and the box turtle are endangered species in Maine. So they're extra special because there's so few of them left. So thank you all for joining us for this Native Turtles of Maine talk. And if you have any other questions, you can follow up with us. You can also check out the website for a virtual tour of the park and for different activities that you can do at home. So we'll show the link for the website at the end of this. And I just want to say thank you all again for joining us.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for Maine's Native Turtles. If you'd like to learn more about inland fisheries and wildlife or the Maine Wildlife Park, you can visit us at mefishwildlife.com or mainewildlifepark.com. Thank you, everybody, and have a great